Hello and welcome back everyone to our final discussion of the day, and it's on the subject matter of power generation. Local authorities have the potential to deliver on a range of energy products, from reducing spend on energy supplied to council-owned buildings, to using council-owned assets such as land and buildings to generate local power from natural sources and nearby income. Councils have a strong track record in supporting renewable energy generation, often through solar photovoltaics installed on council buildings. However, with public sector building some of the most complex structures to power beyond PV systems, are there other solutions for power generation that could ensure net zero is reached by 2050? So let me introduce our panel, who are leaders all in the public sector, looking to take vital steps towards decarbonisation through power generation and the funding opportunities it presents. We have Councillor Janet Henshaw, a Labour councillor for Warrington Borough Council and the Cabinet Member for Sustainability and Climate Change. She is a Commissioner for the Council on the Climate Emergency Commission and the North West Sustainability and Growth Commission. We have Mark Holmes, who's Head of Environmental Partnerships and Climate Change at Cornwall Council. Mark is responsible for the ongoing development and implementation of Cornwall's nationally recognised approach to responding to the climate and ecological emergencies and the need to adapt to our already changing climate. Andrew Oswald is the Environment and Energy Strategy Manager at West Suffolk Council and has 20 years' experience of delivering energy efficiency and renewable energy projects, both in the private and public sector. Melania Tarquino is Strategic Energy Lead at Surrey County Council, and Andrew Busby is Corporate Manager, Property, Leisure and Climate Change. Welcome back, Andrew. You were with us for a previous session. Welcome to you all. And just a reminder, if you do have any questions for our panel, please do pop them in the question box on your screen, and I'll keep an eye on that and try and put those questions to our panelists. So I just thought we could start off with a general question, really, asking you very briefly to tell us what you've been doing when it comes to power generation in your particular area. Let's start with you, Andrew.
Andrew Busby, I hope you mean. So I'll shoot. Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone. So in our area, we've been very focused on the public sector decarbonisation programme, mainly on our leisure centres, because they are our most energy hungry sites. Back in 2012, we invested in solar PV, as was touched on in the introduction there. We maximised our huge roof space to accommodate solar PV to help with the generation of electricity to offset what was being used on the site. Not 100% covers it, and obviously we've got the need to cover nighttime running of a leisure centre as well. Where technology has moved on since those days in 2012, we've obviously got technology in air source, heat pumps, and ground source. Regarding actual power generation, we're looking at ways of storing that electricity generated from the solar PV during the day and utilising battery technology to help smooth out the nighttime spikes of usage. We're also looking into hydroelectricity from a nearby river, whether that's a way of also generating through electricity through the flow of water. In the past, we've looked at CHP, which is known as combined heat and power, albeit they use a small amount of gas. They utilise the heat that's generated from that unit is pumped directly into the heating circuit, and it also generates electricity as well. So that's a very broad view of generation that we've been currently looking at.
Brilliant, thank you. And I'm just going to go over to the other Andrew because it only feels right. So Andrew Oswald.
Yeah. Hi, thanks. Yeah, we're probably on a similar sort of trajectory as yourselves there, Andrew. Like leisure centres, like you say, are a key source. We've got our leisure centres running on a lot of solar, on CHP, and on some ground source heat pumps. We've been installing solar since 2012 when the feed-in tariffs became available. We've continued that through. I guess what we've done kind of beyond, once we've completed all the installs on our own estate, we have now launched a scheme where we're funding the installation of solar panels onto businesses and community assets, where we can generate an income and all the environmental benefits associated with solar. So we've now got 6 megawatts of solar installed on roofs across West Suffolk. And our biggest investment to date has been in a 12 megawatt solar farm. So we purchased a solar farm in 2016. And from the 1st of April, in 9 days' time, 10 days' time, we'll be able to actually use that power to power our own estate through a peer-to-peer energy trading platform. So that's kind of our latest development in that. But previously, we've just been selling it into the wholesale market and generating the income through that. But now we're actually able to use that to power our own estate, and hopefully to be able to share that and allow other people in our sort of area to utilise that energy. Through the public sector decarbonisation scheme, we have got battery storage. We've got a megawatt of battery storage across 2 of our key buildings, and we're still continuing on smaller buildings with air source heat pumps and on ground source heat pumps where appropriate. So we've got a range of technologies there.
Brilliant, thank you. Janet, what about you? What's happening at Warrington Borough Council?
Thank you, Geeta, and thanks for the invite today as well. Yeah, we're doing quite a lot actually. In Warrington itself, we rationalised our council office building fairly recently, well, in the last couple of years. Essentially that's got solar paneling now on the roof, and it's built to quite high energy standards as well. So we have LED lighting in there, centrally controlled air conditioning and heating that can be turned up or down depending upon the weather. And also we have other buildings, the crematorium of all places has solar PV, along with the market and the new youth zone that we've just been involved with. Those are obviously all new buildings and therefore a lot easier to install. On top of that, we have a housing company which has built at the moment 2 developments in Warrington, affordable and other mixed-use housing that all have heat source pumps and solar panels, so that the residents now are saving in the region of about 60% on heating bills. And I think probably one of our biggest ones is that we have investments now ranging back a few years to more recent acquisitions of 3 solar farms, one in Hull, one in York, one in Cirencester. 2 of the 3 also have battery storage, which is a really big thing because it's not wasted then. And the one in Cirencester, to put it more simply, is going to be able to provide enough power for a new electric bus fleet that we've got in Warrington as well, which we're very proud of.
There's a lot going on there. Thank you so much. Let's go over to Melania now. What's happening in Surrey?
Thank you, Gita, and thanks for inviting me. Yeah, our trajectory is quite similar to the other speakers. Really, we are very focused on the public sector, the Decarbonisation Fund. We got the phase 1, 3A, and now we've been awarded funding from 3E, 3B as well. So that in total will be 37 buildings that will have been decarbonized through that, and a grant funding of around £10 million, plus probably other 20 million to top up with internal investment. That's obviously just the start, because we have more than 300 buildings in direct scope for the 2030 Net Zero program, and other buildings that we are considering currently as a scope 3 as well. So all these projects have included fabric improvements, air source heat pumps, some of them include other energy efficiency measures, LED, BMS improvements, ventilation, and we have added solar on top of that as well, because that wasn't covered by the Salix grant. So we have done solar in all of these builds. We are doing solar in these buildings, including a couple of solar carports. We are installing also EV charging points in some sites. We are considering solar farms in land owned by Surrey County Council, and this is proving more challenging than we thought, but we are doing feasibility assessments for 5 sites that will be a total of 18 megawatts installed if we were to develop all of them. And we are also doing a solar PPA arrangement with schools and academies, and potentially considering other buildings like investment sites or sites owned by our district and boroughs, so we can invest on solar panels there as well.
So it's real variety and some commonality, but also kind of unique things that everyone is doing. What about you, Mark, in Cornwall? How's it looking at the moment?
Yeah, thank you. So Cornwall Council has an existing portfolio of 10 megawatts of installed renewable technologies. So that's primarily solar on our municipal buildings, and also we installed Cornwall's first smart grid enabled wind turbine, and the first wind turbine in Cornwall since 2016, about 2 years ago. That was in a partnership with Centrica through a European funding programme, which has got a battery storage on site. We're also just got planning permission for some solar carports and some other ground mount solar activity, and looking at opportunities through our wider public sector and private sector organisations that would like to decarbonise through our renewable energy and low carbon technology investment fund, which looks at making investments on council and then potentially third party sites, and offering a power purchase agreements to the tenants to help reduce their bills. We also looked at we've installed solar in about 600 of our social homes last year to help with cost of living and help with other alongside energy efficiency measures to tackle fuel poverty. Beyond that, at a wider level, we're also we grant funded alongside some European funding investment into 2 deep geothermal projects in Cornwall, which provide base load electricity and excess heat. One of the sites at United Downs, the heat, the power plant is about to be installed next year, but we're looking at how we can potentially utilise the heat through heat networks to decarbonise some building that's ongoing. And we've also piloted biomethane capture on 6 of our council farms. Initially, that biomethane will be used, or is being used, to power some of our fleet vehicles, but there's also potential through that to replace LPG with about 50% of Cornwall being off gas grid. So decarbonisation heat is a real challenge, but that gives us some opportunity. So we've invested in that as a pilot there as well.
Brilliant, some fantastic examples from you all. Thank you. And I've just noticed we've got some questions coming in, so let's kick off with the first one, and this is around solar farms actually. Giles asked, if you own a solar farm, the energy of which goes into the grid, do you offset the GHG saving from your own emissions? It's a very specific question. Andrew Oswald, I don't know if you were able to answer that. I know you mentioned you've got a solar farm.
Yeah, we haven't, and up to this date we haven't used that. It's that is sold into the grid. We don't retire the regode, which is the kind of way of capturing where those emissions are associated. So that hasn't contributed to our own greenhouse gas emissions reduction. But obviously the people that are purchasing that at the other end, normally the wholesale market, they'll be using that to sell green electricity on to their customers. But in the future, once we start taking that power, that the elements of it that we use, we will be able to do that. But yeah, at the moment we haven't been. That isn't the way that the system's set up.
Is there anyone else that would like to add to that?
I'd probably say I visited one of our solar farms in Cirencester fairly recently, and what they're currently doing is planting something, or they're looking into planting something called silverweed. Apparently it's a plant you get from Germany that you can plant beneath the solar panels, which enhances the reflection for the solar panels. So it's actually saving more energy that way and offsetting to a certain degree. But a little like Andrew, we don't yet do anything about that offsetting per se ourselves.
Great, thank you to you both. I'm going to race through to the next question. So this is from Harriet, who asks, what is the single biggest challenge that holds back local authorities from investing? I guess that's investing in power generation. Who would like to pick up on that? Melania, maybe?
Yes, that's a very good question. There are lots of challenges. I would say that mainly financial. We very much have the intention and the plans to invest in our buildings decarbonization, but these projects, we have to face the reality that they don't pay back. When you take a relatively old building and have to retrofit a heat pump and do fabric improvements, even if you do the biggest solar array you can do in that building, the electricity costs are going to be higher than what they were before because of the operation of the heat pump and because of the difference between the gas and electricity rates. That gap between one and the other is not really favorable at the moment. So that implies that any heat pump project will push our costs or running costs up, and the heat pump prices are being really, really high. The cost for the DNO upgrades that we're having to do, in some cases, we need to install a whole new substation in order to allow for the income supply capacity that we need. And when you start factoring other costs like the staff, all the stuff that you need to deliver this project, and all the replacement of the heating meters and pipe work and other works, this goes really, really high. The state funding has been really helpful, but it has only covered between 10 to 25% of our project cost. So this means that the amount that we have had to invest on top of that will never pay back in the lifetime of the asset. And this is something challenging for local authorities, having to compete against other budget priorities and having to acknowledge that decarbonization is going to today implies a loss of budget, basically, in addition to obviously the carbon loss that we need. So yeah, we are thinking of other strategies, looking at ways that we can actually generate some profit that we can after reinvest on this, ring fence the income to reinvest on these decarbonization measures. But also, we are looking forward to some policy changes or changes in the electricity and gas rates, or changes in this high cost of grid connection, etc., that can help us come up with more positive business cases. I think that's a key challenge. And probably, well, we have lots of technical challenges as well, as I say, in terms of grid connection, lead times, the short time scale for delivery of these projects. For example, with PSDS, we have had time scales of 1 year to deliver, which is quite unrealistic sometimes, given that there are lots of things that don't depend on us. For us, it's also the uncertainty of which buildings are going to remain in the building stock for the council in the next 10 years and beyond, because plans are constantly changing, and it's difficult to replace one building for the other in these plans. So yeah, those are some of the challenges, but we have lots of them.
Well, brilliant. Lots of examples there of where you are seeing obstacles. So thank you for that, Melania, for answering that, and thank you for the question. I've got another question here, and it's actually about heat pumps. And Anne-Marie asks, how well have the heat pumps across your estate performed? Any issues to look out for, as they may not be the best fit for all buildings? So I don't know if you'd like to pick up on that, who have installed heat pumps recently.
I can help with that if you like, Peter. So thank you for the question. So heat pumps certainly on domestic are, because we have our council housing in stock or in house. So we've installed domestic sized heat pumps. They have, again, with like anything, through the years, improved dramatically over the years. In the early years, we did have a problem back in the beast from the east weather. We had a number of condensates freeze, which means the source heat pump couldn't get rid of the water, froze up, and obviously cut out, which was a bit of a problem. But since that's been rectified, they do appear to be very, very reliable. Obviously, time will tell, as all things, but technology is continuously improving. Manufacturers are offering very good warranties now, so that's also important to tap into. Noise is also an important factor, so make sure that when you choose a heat pump that you take in consideration the necessary dB rating of the motors. So if you've got, for example, two properties very close together with just garden fence between them, you can build perhaps some soundproofing without affecting the airflow, but to help to reduce that fan speed noise when residents are enjoying their gardens. But all in all, like everything, it's improving all the time. But certainly the older models, there is issues in very, very cold weather.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Does anyone else want to add to the heat pumps before we move on? I think Andrew's done a very good job of that, thank you. And so I've got a question here from Mandy, who asks, with solar panels, oh sorry, it's just moved, we're getting lots of questions coming in. Just want to find it again. With solar panels, what happens to them at the end of their useful life? Who remains responsible for them if we ask to do exercise? And how are councils managing the leases of properties to exclude the roof so the council benefits from the energy and not the tenants? Mark, did you say that you have solar panels? That's something that you have a view on?
Yeah, so we've there's varying theory in terms of what the working life is of a lot of the panels, but we have just had a scheme where we've replaced some of our earlier panels, and actually there are charities and other organisations who will take those panels and reuse them elsewhere, or can dispose of them appropriately and recycle the relevant bits. But most of the panels will have a long working life, and in fact some of the new ones, they're now saying some companies will guarantee up to, I think it was 80% production after 40 years. So the lifetime of those panels is really, with as technology evolves, is really moving out. So from that perspective, in terms of leases, what we've sort of looked at in terms of developing our business models, we've actually, in our approach, we're looking at, rather than us keeping the power, we're actually looking to sell the power to the tenants of those buildings, in which enables them to make a saving on their energy bills, and the council to take that back in terms of covering the capital costs and the ongoing operation and maintenance, and part of that is building in a total program. So we've committed to installing 2 megawatts a year for the next 7 years through to 2030. But in most of those cases, if the council doesn't occupy the building, we're finding it's better to sell the power to the tenants in those buildings rather than try and lease it off, because as was said earlier, you can't, unless you're utilising that power yourself, you can't claim the carbon credits from that perspective.
Yeah, and actually it's interesting that you talk about selling the excess electricity. Rosie has also posted a question here which sort of links into that. Do you sell any excess electricity produced via solar panels back to electricity suppliers through a power purchase agreement? Is there anyone that does that? I can see Andrew Oswald nodding there.
Yeah, on the buildings, basically if you want to sell the power, you have to have an export power on the site, and you have to pay an annual charge for that. So you find if the site's big enough in terms of generation, we will sell that power. We will sell that power. A bit of reverb here, but yes, if basically on a site probably over 100 kilowatts or more, it's worth power purchase agreement to sell that power.
Fantastic. Janet, let me bring you in, because we did hear from Melania and also I think it was Andrew talking about some of the the challenges, really the single biggest challenge at the moment for investment. I wonder in Warrington what you have found to be the biggest challenge when it comes to decarbonisation of its own housing stock and how you're sort of overcoming that.
Frustrations is the funding, to be honest. I mean, you know, we've applied for funding because they are applications for funding the vast majority of time. There's no pot of money that's allocated to different local authorities. These are all grants that come out on a kind of piecemeal basis from with offers all over the place, really. So, you know, public sector decarbonisation fund, BEIS, DEFRA, all different kinds of people. The problems around the funding are that there's a lot of time and resources put into these bids, and we don't always win the bid. I think, as Melania said earlier, we're competing against each other for these pots of money. So somebody will always lose out. You know, I could give you one example where the bidding process opened and closed 20 minutes later because of the number of people who'd applied. And that with the time and resources, particularly when you don't get the grant for whatever reason, means that you've actually put an awful lot in and got nothing back. And I think the officers in particular find that quite frustrating. But from a resources perspective, it's really, really frustrating to the authority because, you know, we've had years of underfunding, and, you know, we really can't afford to waste resources on things that we're not going to get. But at the same time, if we don't apply, we might miss out. You know, our view is that this is pitting local authorities against each other, when really we should all be working with something like this in particular. We should be working together. You know, it's a common goal. It's not, you know, an individual authority issue, and we shouldn't be forced into competition, I feel.
Thank you, Janet. Conscious actually we are almost at the end of our time for this discussion, so actually what might be a nice way to wrap up, we've only got a couple of minutes left, but if each of you could share, you know, one single thing that you think would actually help move the dial forward, that would really help you. Why don't we start with you, Melania? Is there one thing that you think would help?
Can you hear me there?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah,
a bit of feedback. Yeah, I would say support to the local authorities to develop business cases that are financially sustainable, and for support in terms of the energy rates and the possibility to share experiences with and these lessons learned with other local authorities as well, because we are all going through the same challenges, but yeah, we are working quite in isolation, it feels sometimes.
Brilliant, thank you. Andrew?
Yeah, hi, obviously completely echo that. So, you know, the first time you do these projects, it takes a lot of time and a lot of work. And if we can sort of share that information, we're trying to work with local authorities around us to share good practice, basically to try and speed up the time it takes to deliver these sort of projects. So I guess sort of cooperation and partnerships would probably make this a lot easier, and that's something that we're aware of and trying to develop.
Brilliant. Andrew Busby?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. So I would say low borrowing rates from the Public Works Loan Board, with favourable borrowing for decarbonisation investments would be much favourable as well, in addition to what panel colleagues have said.
Brilliant, thank you. And Mark?
Yeah, I think for me, we found our biggest challenge is actually the electricity grid and its ability to cope. We've got a number of opportunities that would stand up for investments for us as a local authority or private sector, but actually the inability to connect to the grid, certainly in Cornwall, potentially through to 2032 and beyond, That's the biggest barrier we face, and the financial and the economic side stack up, and the interest is there. So.
Thank you. And lastly, last word to you, Janet, before we wrap up.
Oh, thank you. I think I'd go back to what I was saying before, but listening to what other people are saying as well, I think more cooperation and a better way of funding that's fairer and based more on need. I think, one particular funding bid that we had that was very successful was done jointly with another authority. And I think if there were more opportunities for that kind of approach, that would be really helpful.
Brilliant, thank you. And hopefully today has been a great opportunity for people to make those partnerships and connections going forward. So thank you, Rebecca, Janet, Mark and Andrew for such an engaging and insightful conversation. I'd also like to thank everyone who's taken part today. We've covered a whole range of challenges, opportunities and solutions as we discuss public sector decarbonisation. Whether you are one of our many excellent panellists who've been with us today, or if you're part of the audience, you've been sending questions, a very big thank you for all the team here at PSE 365. Thank you also to our fantastic partners without whom events like this simply wouldn't take place. Now, our next event, one for the diary, is Public Sector Digital Transformation on the 18th of May 2023. So please do register and share this with your contacts and colleagues, as we would love to welcome new faces and welcome back many of you to our platform. Now, as we mentioned right at the start, today's event was CPD certified with 1 CPD point earned for every hour of live content that's watched. And you can get your CPD certificate by emailing marketing@cognitivepublishing.com. From me and everyone at PSE 365, thank you so much for being a brilliant audience. We really hope that you enjoyed the conversations. Have a great day and we'll see you next time.